Welcome to the latest episode on First Word and Sport on Friday morning. How are you doing, James?
All good, Luke. Enjoying the storm at the moment here. Yourself?
Tired. I think it's what happens when you watch Arsenal play Liverpool last night. one of the worst games of football I can remember.
Yeah, it wasn't the best. We'll come on to it. Talking of Liverpool, I did have yesterday off work, so I watched the Kenny Dalglish documentary on Amazon Prime. Very good, actually. Obviously, for a Liverpool fan and a player I didn't really watch, obviously, growing up, but some old footage and some harrowing footage of Heysel and Hillsborough and how he acted and how it all planned out. So if any Liverpool fans haven't watched it, or anyone else, it's not bad. An hour and a half, Amazon Prime. It's directed by the people who did the Maradona documentary as well, so it's well done and well through research. Highly recommend it.
I always find it weird when you watch football back from sort of 80s. It just feels a very different game. But let's talk about that game yesterday. So Arsenal 0, Liverpool 0. Not the end of the world for Arsenal, as given other results. Keeps them 6 points clear. What did you make of it yesterday?
Dire, from Arsenal point of view. They just don't know what they just came up again. Liverpool played a different way. They played with two false nines in Wirtz and Szoboszlai, played Gakpo off the left and Frimpong off the right. And the tactics were pretty clear from Liverpool. Sit on Zubimendi, whether that was Wirtz or Szoboszlai, and stop that progression from Zubimendi. Arsenal were a much better side for the first 20 minutes. Liverpool sat in, tried to weather the storm, no pun intended. It was filthy conditions last night there at Emirates. And then once 20 minutes came up, Arsenal really didn't do anything. They had a couple of good chances. Saka beat Kirkes a couple of times, and Alisson's handling was impressive last night. It really was. Under those conditions, slippery ball, he didn't make a mistake yesterday, kept hold of the ball a couple of times. And Arsenal didn't really create anything in the first half. Second half, they were downright poor. And Liverpool really should have taken advantage of them. But Liverpool didn't have a shot on target for the first time in 600 Premier League games since 2001, I think it is. Something ridiculous like that. Didn't have a shot on target. XG of 0.3. But you could argue they could have had a penalty in the first half. Would have been very soft on Frimpong. But he does take his leg out. It would be soft. But they probably wouldn't have overturned it if they'd given it. And the second half, if they'd given it, they wouldn't have overturned it. Soft, yes, but seen them both given. Not upset that they weren't given. Liverpool 10 unbeaten. Take the point, move on. One thing, or a couple of things come out of it is that Liverpool were disciplined. The attitude was a lot better than in recent weeks. The mindset improved, and it seemed like the players were actually playing for slot, considering how they were, to my eye, against Fulham and Leeds when they were just disinterested. Rice's worst game for a long time, but he was nullified. And Martinelli, what an absolute little brat. When he comes on for Trossard, right, he dies in the penalty area, trying to get penalty, feigning injury, wanting the ball to stop play because it happened in the first half with Frimpong, when Frimpong was actually injured. And then when Bradley went down injured, and looks like a serious knee injury for Bradley, not only does he throw the ball on top of Bradley, which is a yellow card, he then knees him in the head, which is another yellow card, and then throws him off the pitch. And Anthony Taylor goes, "Oh, you can have a little yellow card, mate." It should have been a straight red card. And if they don't retrospectively ban him, it's just pointless. It's just ridiculous. And he's garbage, by the way. Absolutely garbage. He just hasn't progressed under Arteta at all, by the way. He looked really, really good 4 or 5 years ago, and now he just looks an average Premier League player.
I suspect in terms of retrospective action, the fact that he saw the incident and only gave him a yellow card will mean they can't do any retrospective action.
Yeah, but that's not right, though.
I think we've touched on Arsenal not being convincing, and set piece FC and all this sort of stuff. I actually thought the first half reminded me a little bit of the Villa game, actually, in terms of, although I thought Villa were offered more than Liverpool did in that first half. But the difference being, obviously, is Onana went off, and then obviously the Martinez howler from the corner straight away in the second half. Arsenal, something just doesn't seem quite right, and some of that may stem from Gyökeres, but offensive, going forward, it just, I don't know, it just looks very pedestrian, slow, laboured, and as you say, apart from the couple of times that Saka got in, behind Kirkes on the byline, it just, I don't know, it just didn't look particularly threatening.
Saka's been poor for 12 months, by the way. He's just the same player he was 15 months. I know that ankle injury, etc., or the hamstring, sorry, when he had that surgery, but he's looked the same player. Yeah, they just don't. Gyökeres is the biggest waste of money I've seen in a long, long time. He looks an absolute cart horse. He looks what he is, a lower-end Premier League player that succeeded in a poor league in Portugal. He's 27, 28, by the way. Not like he's a kid. He's not going to progress and improve.
No, but he doesn't look like a striker who is a lower-end Premier League striker. He doesn't. That's the point. Is I don't know at what point Arteta, goes back to Marino or Jesus. I'm not sure how far away Havertz is, but he's going to make a big decision at some point, and I think that involves dropping him. They look better without him, to be honest. One thing would touch. So Miles Lewis-Skelly obviously came on as a substitute, looked dreadful, looked slow. So things that we didn't see last year when he was breaking through. It does smack of a player who has lost confidence. It does smack of a player who isn't match sharp. And I think this is the sort of thing that Arsenal are going to struggle with at some point when they have such a big squad. Is players like Lewis-Skelly aren't going to want to sit on the bench and play every now and again. He'd got himself into the England reckoning, and he's going to want to play. And Arsenal aren't going to want him to go out on loan because they need him, to cover that left back spot. I know that Calafiori can play there. Timber can play on that side if needs be. They have a few options there, but he has to play. He looks so far. He looked so good for Arsenal last year, and when you see the shadow of the player he is at the moment, you have to look at Arteta a little bit in terms of how he's handled that situation.
Yeah, I agree with you. He looked really bad. As you say, though, he's got no rhythm, not playing any football. He needs to go on loan. The issue they won't let him go on loan, I don't think, because Calafiori's injury prone. Hincapié picked up a knock last night. They've got a load of games coming up. So how is he going to progress? He's not playing under 21 football, so he's way too good for it, and that level is not good enough. Yeah, he needs to go and play games, and that's how you develop, play games. Same as Nwaneri on the other side. He's not going to play at all.
He's brilliant,
he
by the
won't
way.
even run the bench. Yeah, he needs to go and play some football. So apart from that, yeah, they're still 6 points clear, aren't they? So
what's interesting? Go on, just quickly. I was just going to say quickly. They have a couple of cup games. So I think they're away at Portsmouth, I think it is, and then they've got the Carabao Cup game, and then the next Premier League game is away at Forest. Obviously, Forest haven't been good, but City Ground, that'd be an interesting test for Arsenal. It's not some gimme home game against bottom six team. They'll have to go and I'm intrigued to see how they respond, because last night looked a little bit tentative, a little bit nervous again, and there was no need for that really. So I was a bit surprised.
The fans were getting nervous, definitely. And the last point on this game, we should talk about the shot clock, because that corner at the end should never have been allowed to be taken, that kind of thing. I've watched it back. It was only allowed to be taken because it's a corner. If that's anywhere else in the field, the referee blows up. And it's a huge chance for Gabriel at the end, and arguably he should score. But go and watch it again. I know Bradley was down for X amount of time, but it's way over the time, and he just allows the corner to take place. And no, shot clocks that everyone knows, because the only person who knows how long's left in a game is the referee, and that's just not on. It's the same thing happened in Newcastle Leeds game when 10 minutes and then he plays 14, which is probably right, but no one knows. It's just a lottery how much time's left. No one knows. So bring that shot.
I don't know about that Newcastle game. I mean, I was watching that game and I was expecting him to blow up before the Newcastle equaliser. Do you know what it felt a little bit like? It felt like he couldn't blow up straight away after they kicked off, because that would have then looked a bit weird.
Exactly. I just don't understand why we don't have one in, because talked about it, teams will just go down and abuse the 30-second rule, and etc., etc. But it's what it is at the moment.
Okay, let's talk about other games. Obviously, Man City drew 1-1 with Brighton. Another really poor result for them. I mean, it wasn't a great performance. I mean, I did miss, I don't know if you saw the game, they wasted a couple of really good chances after Brighton errors. Haaland certainly had a great chance at the end. I think it was Bernardo hit the post as well. But still, just very underwhelming, I think, from City. Key time of the season, they've gone and drawn 3 games in a row. Obviously, they get some
as well. I don't know whether it's the training or players have been, I don't know, they're trying to protect them for later in the season. I'm surprised Cherky didn't start. I know we've got no centre-backs at the moment. We've got Kusanov. He's garbage, absolute garbage. He dives in because he's out of position all the time. I said to you earlier on one of these pods, take away his pace and he's a rubbish defender. Obviously, the young kid, Max Alleyne, son of Mark Alleyne, the ex-England Gloucestershire cricketer, he looked quite composed, what I saw of him briefly. They've obviously signed Semenyo this morning. That'll help them a lot down that right-hand side, offer a goal threat. They don't actually have that many. I mean, Foden's just fallen off a cliff again at the moment. But Semenyo will help a lot playing off that right-hand side. Doku's obviously back fit. But would he play both Semenyo and Doku? Against the rubbish and low block he will do. I think you're going to have to. Because the draws in the Premier League are the ones that kill you, by the way. Liverpool lost two titles because they drew too many games under Klopp. You have to win games. So it's almost time to take the handbrake off at City at times and go and play Doku, Semenyo, Haaland and Cherky. And if that's dropping Bernardo, you drop Bernardo and you play Rodri and you play another one.
Well, I think for City, they've been a little bit unlucky in that, I mean, they've been slightly fortunate in that they've been taking a lot of their chances. And then in these last 3 games, I mean, that second half against Sunderland, they battered them and should easily have won that game. They missed so many chances. And again, yesterday on a different day, they could easily have won that game. So, I mean, a lot of it does come down to taking your chances. And I guess the difference between Arsenal and Man City is Arsenal just that bit more solid defensively. You watch City defend it, and they're just such a car crash at times.
Yeah, they're all over the place. Said to you before, though, Pep can never, ever coach a defence. Probably because he hasn't have to in his career anyway, because he's been at Barcelona, Bayern Munich and Man City. So teams with always 60-65% of the ball, always on the front foot, always don't need to defend because teams are worried about offensively for them against them. So just look who he's bought defensively throughout his career. At Man City, it's been quite ridiculous. And obviously talk about Mark Gay and things to this now. I mean, yeah.
Well, let's talk West Ham Forest, because obviously it was a massive game in terms of the impact on the relegation side of things. Obviously, Forest ended up winning 2-1. A game mired in some controversy. Before we come on to that penalty, I do just want to say Forest, I touched on it last week, Forest under Dyche look so poor relative to the players that they have. The fact they've managed to win that game is a minor miracle. they've been so fortunate to pick up that win. They just look dreadful. And as I said to you, in terms of players like Anderson, I don't know if he's just suddenly massively overrated. It's not a case of not saying he's a good player, because he is a good player. But when you start talking about top midfielders, I don't see it at the moment. He might be tired. He's played a lot of football in the last year. I thought he was poor against a poor West Ham team when they needed him to be good. Obviously, what I always find interesting is he got the assist from a free kick, and then it's funny if you read Twitter, it's suddenly, oh, he's had a good game because he had an assist from a free kick. You know, ignoring everything else. He was poor, and I think Forest generally very poor. Lucky to get a result there.
It's a huge win for Forest. By the way, it's never a penalty in a million years.
I completely agree. I'm surprised at how many people think it is a penalty. I mean, I look at it from goalkeeper's perspective. Okay, that ball's about a yard from his hands. He would have been expecting that ball to hit his hands. He's focused only on the ball. Obviously, the fact that the defender's taken it almost out of his hands, clearing it. Obviously, then he's, clashed into Gibbs White. There's nothing intentional there. The ball's, been cleared away from danger. I just do not see how that is a penalty.
As I said, I don't think it's a penalty. And Forest, Anderson's going back to it. Talking £100 million player. £100 million player should dominate that game against a bang average West Ham side who are getting relegated. Take control of the game, dominate the game, control the pace, the tempo, etc. And he doesn't do it. Yeah.
I definitely think his hype has got out of control on the back of England performances against some pretty terrible opponents. But I also think that what you're seeing is, again, the media makes and breaks players. The media tells you Anderson's suddenly a great player, and then all we ever hear about is how great Anderson is. And, the fans lap it up. Next thing you know is, he's going to go to a Man United, or, he's the next big thing. He's suddenly a £100 million player. I haven't seen it, to be honest. And it's not just after timing on the back of that performance on Tuesday night. You can rewind the tapes.
Yeah, he's a good player, but he's not a £100 million player. I'd much rather Adam Wharton over him every day of the week, twice on a Sunday.
No, I mean, every time I see Wharton, I'm impressed. He was good against Villa the other night. Just so composed in terms of how he links everything up. It makes it look easy, to be honest.
Talking of the Villa game, so I watched that game, obviously, mainly because Villa are third and think how they're doing. You're a Villa fan. One of my brother-in-law is a Villa fan. The only game 0-0 with no team scoring. But yeah, Wharton was good that game. Yeah, Villa don't have a great record there. Could have snatched at the end when it hit the post and Matty Cash's cross in. A draw is probably a fair result. It's nothing at the end of the world, but
I think the draw was more than fair. I think it's interesting because Villa have struggled so badly against Palace in recent times. I think Villa would have taken, honestly, given their record, Villa would have taken a draw. You look at the other results, no real damage done. Villa's title bid remains alive. I mean, all jokes aside, we've got two of our hardest second fixtures out of the way now with Arsenal. I haven't played them twice, played Palace twice. It's easy from here on in, James. Let's touch on Fulham Chelsea, because it was quite interesting. Obviously, Rossignol was made Chelsea manager. I thought this was quite interesting. On the Tuesday, I didn't feel he was ready to take over the team for the match on the Wednesday, which I can kind of understand a little bit. But there's also struck me as a little bit weak in terms of it felt like he knew it was a tricky game. He wanted a nice opener because they're playing Charlton in the FA Cup this weekend. Obviously, McFarlane had done all the preparation for the game anyway. I don't know. I was just Chelsea. I thought Chelsea were probably a little bit unfortunate in that game. I think Fulham have definitely ridden their luck in recent weeks in terms of overachieving. I think Cucurella, you can't really complain with the sending off. And Harry Wilson scores again. A really nice finish.
Yeah, I mean, game changes completely when Cucurella gets sent off. I don't know why he's arguing, and all those Chelsea players getting 3 yellow cards in a minute. They're arguing. I don't know. If he was given a penalty, it wouldn't have been a red card, would it? It's only been a yellow card.
You can't have double
jeopardy rule, yeah.
As long as right. So I think with that is you have to be making an attempt to play the ball. That would be the only. Right. So if you're deliberately taking someone out, you can get
on a red card. Okay.
Yeah. So I think if you're genuinely making a tackle, then you can't get the red card and the penalty.
I mean, yeah, it's another poor result for Chelsea, but yeah, Rosinia coming in. He's only been appointed because he's Blue Echo managing Strasbourg. And I read an article on the BBC today about how he plays. I don't know anything about Rosinia, how he plays and what his philosophies are, or does he play 4 at the back or 3 at the back? And they look like they defend with a 5, and they asked one of the wingers to come back in the play as a fullback kind of thing and move one of the fullbacks into a centre-back position. And that doesn't change which side of the ball it is. They just nominate one fullback to go and do it. And then when he's in possession of the ball, he plays the 3 at the back, and he has the 2 midfielders. But those 2 midfielders don't come from a fullback. They actually start in midfield. So it's not like when they invert the fullback. They keep the 2 midfielders all the time there. So you don't get overloaded when you lose the ball high in transition, which if Reece James played there or Gutso played there, they could be overloaded down that flank. So they have those 2 midfielders. Now, whether that will be Santos, who he coached at Strasbourg last season, and Caicedo, or they wait till Lavia comes back, or they move Reece James permanently into midfield, which we talked about. I don't think he's good enough, especially the top games. He's not good enough as a midfielder. His weaknesses get exploited there. So it'll be interesting to see what they do. Still the same conundrum with Fernandez. He played as a 10, didn't he? And they played Palmer on the right-hand side. I don't think that works. I don't think Palmer will want to track back. So you're going to have to ask Neto to be that winger who goes back, which I'm sure he'll be delighted with. Still got the problem as a goal scorer as well. Chelsea don't have Delap, I don't think good enough for Chelsea at the moment to lead the line. So yeah, he's got
tricky.
Fire,
suddenly you look at that those Champions League spots, and so we talked about this maybe a month ago. Chelsea looked very, in a very good position to finish in those top 5. I'm assuming it'll be top 5 and not top 4 for Champions League. Almost certainly will be. But they were looking in great shape for that. Suddenly now there's a lot of teams around them, and if they don't start picking up some points, Chelsea, you can easily see them not making those top 5 places, and that will be a bit of a disaster for them, I think.
Yeah, and let's see their fans complaining, we want our Chelsea back. Well, what is your Chelsea back, lads? Is this Chelsea back under Roman, who was dodgy as hell, and the Premier League and the UK government at the time turned blind eye to and owes the UK government 2.2 billion? Or is it the Chelsea under Matthew Harding, when you were just a non-entity small club from Southwest London with 10,000 fans? The only reason they're complaining, by the way, is because they're not winning stuff. Because football fans do not care about the debt on their club, the way it's been run. All they care is about transfers and trophies. And that's the only reason Chelsea are complaining.
And entertaining football. So it's one thing I would say about Maresca's football. Pretty dire stuff. So when you throw everything into the mix, it's not ideal. I mean, let's sort of pivot on to United, because obviously we've had similar news stories all week about, you know, the Man United DNA, the Man United way. We've had, you know, everyone asking Alex Ferguson whether they're allowed to go to the toilet, you know, 13 years after he's left, and all these sorts of things. I mean, rarely has a figure loomed so large over a club and probably holding, you know, single-handedly responsible for holding a club back. I find it just incredible. I mean, maybe
that's
it's
exactly
just
what it is, by the way. Exactly what it is. Darren Fletcher, who's the interim caretaker, whatever he is at the moment, obviously taking charge in the FA Cup game against Brighton this weekend, rang up Fergie, asked him for his permission. What, do you want to come and hold my hand then? Wipe my bum as well. Like, same thing with Solskjaer 4 years ago. Doesn't park in the manager's car parking space at Carrington because it's not. He calls out the boss. It's holding the back, as you say, and they're complaining about Ineos and Glazers. Well, as I said to my mate in the week, what do you want then? Who's going to take over you? Who's got the money to spend, what, 4.5 billion to take over?
But it's not.
Only one country can do that, by the way, and that's the Saudis.
Or Qatar. I mean, Qataris are the ones you're linked with them. I mean,
yeah.
What I find, what I don't understand with the argument about the owners at United is it's not like the managers haven't been backed. You look at all the stats, right? All the data, you know, around the amount of money they've spent. They have spent absolute fortunes. They spent another 200 million in the summer. Ten Hag was back the summer before to big money. You know, if you look, the fact is they've just spent it really badly. You know, but it's not a case of managers not being backed. You know, they've tried to get good managers in like Mourinho, and, you know, obviously recently not so much, but spending money on wages isn't a problem for, you know, isn't the problem as to why Man United aren't succeeding.
No, exactly. So they just haven't got the right people in that club. We talked about Wilcox on Monday, completely out of his depth. Said to blue in the face, he's out of his depth, sir. Hasn't a clue what's going on.
But it's funny hearing stories about him, you know, during this week, actually, in terms of how he quite fancies coaching, managing type himself, which always gets a little bit messy.
And I look at, so they're talking about obviously appointing an interim to the end of the season. So now at the moment, you've got Solskjaer and Michael Carrick, who are essentially 50-50 who can get the job. Why haven't they appointed someone yet already? They clearly know who they want. So why haven't you appointed it? Why are you waiting it longer and longer, kicking the can down the road? And they've got to have some sort of plan for the summer, like. And as I talked about it, if they go and get Glasner, they'll be absolutely mental. But who's going to go there to Man United if they're not in the Champions League? No big manager is. Not hope and help.
They're not going to be able to show their hand in terms of the summer, just in terms of managers who are under contract, or, you know, managers who are at World Cups, all these sorts of things, right? So that's not a huge surprise. The interim thing just gets a bit weird, because in some respects I'm surprised they got rid of Amorim, because they were still actually performing okay under Amorim. I mean, in terms of what the alternative is, you know, bringing Ollie back. I mean, I've heard some, you know, like ridiculous stories in my time, but that's right up there with just crazy. You know, Carrick has shown nothing, like, in terms of at this sort of level that he would be an answer. They actually played. I know they drew against Burnley in midweek. They were very unlucky to draw that game. I mean, I think they had 30 shots, but it wasn't just that. They've obviously, you know, Burnley have scored a deflected goal. There's been another great finish from Anthony. I think United hit the woodwork twice, had goals disallowed, they had 2 shots cleared off the line. There was all sorts of weird and wonderful things in that game. So United actually played okay. I mean, obviously Bruno back being helps. But I don't get it, what they're doing, to be honest.
Well, the issue is So they want to play 4-2-3-1. They haven't got any wingers.
Well,
Sold all
Diallo,
the wingers.
when Diallo comes back, he can play as a winger.
What, as a left winger?
Well, Diallo can play on the right.
Where's Remo playing?
He can play left wing.
Sold their two wingers. Sold Rashford and Garnacho. Their squad's a mess. You talked about it. We've talked about it. It's quite entertaining actually to see how far they have fallen. They are the biggest club who have fallen that far. Liverpool back in their day, in the 90s and the early 2000s, never fell as low as United. It's quite hilarious to see as a non-Man United fan how far they have fallen and how far they are away from challenging for any major honours. Light years away.
Well, I think that was
10 years. They won't win the Premier League for 10 years, by the way.
So that was one of the interesting comments that was attributed to Wilcox this week, was that apparently he had a conversation with someone and suggested that he thought there were only 3 or 4 players away from being pretty special. And no, Jason, you're not.
Closer to the relegation, you are top of the table, lads.
Just trying to think any other. Oh, do want to touch on the Everton Wolves game. The refereeing decisions in that game by Thomas Kirk. The red card against Keane is ridiculous for pulling hair. It's just a nonsense. It?
Disagree with you.
No, you can disagree with me all you want. You go up. He's gone up for that ball. He's not like yanked his hair or like completely. You look at a sport like NFL and how they deal with long hair like that.
The rules quite clearly say you can't pull over his hair. The referee's got no option to send him off.
I don't think that's a red card, honestly.
I do.
I think right. So there's different ways to sort of pull hair, right? So
yeah, I agree with you.
A player away from you, and you're yanking his hair back, or a player's beyond you, and you yank his hair back, right? He's gone up for a header, right? He's so close to him. I have no idea whether how deliberate something like that is. He's literally like next to him. I
think it was deliberate, but you can't do it. It's clear as day in the rules. You can't pull someone's hair like that. Don't care who you are. On that point, so it's Thomas, the referee, for the second Premier League game, wasn't it? Kind of a bit overawed, and the players knew that as well. Look at Jack Grealish's reaction.
That is never a second yellow card based on all the other reactions.
Well,
no, based on all the other reactions we see, week in, week out from players clapping. There's a lovely little picture of Van Dijk clapping.
Referees,
right? I can understand it, right? Because Grealish gets fouled so often, right? And sometimes he gets the foul, sometimes he doesn't. And he obviously got absolutely clattered, gets the free kick, and he applauds. And then he walks off. He doesn't stay in the referee's face or anything like that. It was just...
He does go back to the referee, actually. But anyway.
Say again?
He goes back to the referee. But he only misses one game, misses the FA Cup game, doesn't he?
Yeah, but that's not a yellow. That's not a sending off. But it's that inconsistency again. You'll see players this weekend who will clap officials or shout at officials and everything else, and they won't get yellow cards and red cards and stuff.
Yeah. Can we move on to our favourite subject?
Well, we've already talked about Slot.
Thomas Frank.
Is this before or after drinking out of an Arsenal cup?
When that first happened and that first photo came out, I thought it was an AI photo. I was like, that can't be true.
You had to think it was. I mean, honestly, it's so ridiculous.
I mean, crumbs. And then you see at the end of the game, I mean, Paulina's goal was brilliant. Semenyo's goal was brilliant. But after the game was telling again that Mickey van der Ven, who I want at Liverpool, by the way, he is a fantastic defender. You can forget Mark Gaze. I want Mickey van der Ven if you're going to buy a Premier League defender. And Romero's comments after game on Instagram were pretty damning and pretty an indictment that, one, Thomas Frank under massive pressure there, and two, the board are going to have to make a decision because clearly the fans don't rate Frank and the players are starting to question him. as well. So TikTok with him, I think.
Oh, I mean, look, we've talked about it for weeks. Is come back to the fundamentals. If you play a terrible style of football, absolute garbage, obviously they have injuries, but they also spent a lot of money in the summer again. He doesn't know what his, I don't think he knows what his best lineup is. He looks, it's weird to say he looks out of his depth, given what he's done at Brentford, but he looks almost out of his depth. He doesn't quite know what's going on.
And Kudos, their best player this season's injured to April as well.
I'm always left feeling that when I see the situation unfold with Frank and I see how Andrews is doing, and it's the same at Brighton, but obviously Brentford and the data boys with Benham and co, Brighton with Bloom, it feels like so much of it's more about the club itself, the structure at the club, the players that they're able to recruit rather than the individual managers, or individual personnel. It feels like Frank almost couldn't fail to succeed in that Brentford situation he found himself in. And it's happening again with Andrews. There's nothing to suggest Andrews is some amazing coach or manager. Obviously, he started off brilliantly, but I don't know. You don't lose your three of your better forward players in the last year or so, and what, they fifth in the league. It's crazy, but it feels very much like a club-based thing. The more I see likes of Frank struggle, whether it be Potter from Brighton, these sorts of things, it makes me think it's just do not employ a manager from Brighton or Brentford,
or even the data boys as well, because it's Chelsea bought them all from Brighton as well under Potter, spent 20 million quid. How good are they? It's just a structure. They've got a fantastic structure there. Obviously, the penalty save, by the way, is hilarious. The Panenka that Keller makes at 1-0. Thiago getting his 15th goal of the season, the top Brazilian scorer in the Premier League history. 15 in, 20 games is outrageous. Another one that picked up from... Well, they spent a bit of money on him, let's be honest. But...
Well, he missed out last year injured. He missed most of last season injured. So they spent... He was not cheap, but he's obviously rewarding that money. I think what you saw again was just how fine the margins are in this game. Lefay chance to equalise 1-1, that becomes a very different game. Obviously he misses. Sunderland, go and score, and Brentford go and score, and it looks a very comfortable win for Brentford. I'm not sure it's quite the case.
Yeah, Keith Andrews doing a good job, fifth, as you say.
Any others? I want to touch just quickly on that Newcastle Leeds game. The two penalties. I mean, obviously two handballs, but particularly the one Newcastle got at the end, where Cross defenders sort of jumped up, turned his back, and the ball struck one of his arms. The penalty situation is so that punishment of a penalty is so disproportionate to what has happened there. I don't know at what point they're going to look at penalties in terms of situations like that. If that's just a free kick, it's just such a drastic penalty for what actually, what the crime is. There's no guarantee.
An indirect free kick or something.
You could have an indirect free kick.
10 minutes in bin or whatever it is, I don't know.
I mean, whatever the punishment is, it's not worthy of a penalty. I mean, I did something on my blog this week about penalties, and something like there were like 12 chances or something this week in this midweek games, which were valued at 0.4 xg or more. Obviously, 5 of those are penalties at almost 0.8. The value of a penalty massively outweighs the crimes committed. You only have to look at the West Ham game. The penalty there. That ball's going out. It's going away from danger. Even like the Doku one, Broby one, all of them. None of them are. Penalties were really introduced for if a player handled the ball on the line or a player gets hacked down through on goal, things like that. Now we're seeing penalties for absolute nonsense. But,
yeah, the rules are there, aren't they? It's a clear penalty by Aronson. Leeds will feel annoyed they lost that game when they were ahead 3 times. Big win for Newcastle actually at home.
I mean, Perry has to do better with that Barnes shot at the end.
Yeah.
Okay, let's talk about AFCON today, quarterfinals. We've got Mali, Senegal, and Cameroon, Morocco. And then tomorrow we've got Algeria, Nigeria, Egypt, and Cameroon.
Again, I haven't watched any of it. I probably won't watch it this weekend either. There's too much other sport to watch. Just hope Mo Salah, as a Liverpool fan, comes back safe and sound and can play against not Barnsley on Monday night, Burnley next week in the Premier League.
So you want Salah to stay now?
He won't play anyway because Slot won't play him anyway. I want him to come back uninjured so we can send him to Saudi.
Okay, let's talk other sports. Cricket. Obviously, England lost the Ashes 4-1. Another pretty comprehensive defeat, I guess you'd say. 5 wickets. Obviously, the big innings of the game was probably heads. I mean, obviously, Root scored a ton. Bethel scored a second innings 100 as well, his first one. Any particular thoughts? I know you're very negative on England.
4-1 seems the right result. And as you said last week or on Monday, that it seems the result that English cricket fans, if you want to be honest with yourselves and the ECB, it seems the result where you can say, well, actually, we need some change. And it doesn't feel to me that they're going to make change. All the noise coming out is say we're going to give McCullum time to make the change. Well, you pointed him on what his philosophy is, and that is letting players have responsibility, which they clearly have taken to the nth degree. You're asking him to change. He's not going to change. So there's only one result in my eyes. You should really sack him. From the test side, let's separate red ball cricket and white ball cricket. They're 2 completely different sports in my view. And they've just got completely different skill sets. And maybe after 3.5 years of being involved in the test side, his race is run. His ideas of Bazball and trying to take the draw out of the equation and score 4-5 and over, be entertaining. Yeah, it might win the odd test match here and there, but it won't win in a series against a good side. Well, a competent side, because this Australian side aren't a good side. They aren't at all. They've relied on 3 players winning that series, essentially. Well, 4 you can count. Scott Bolland, who's been brilliant as well, but obviously Stark took 30 wickets. And they've relied on Head at the top of the order getting 600 odd runs, I think. 200 more than anyone else. And they've relied on Carey's brilliance behind the stumps and him getting vital runs batting at 6. They've kind of beaten us with 3.5, 4 players kind of thing. But England haven't stood up at all. They've got to have some change in that test side. I mean, Harry Brook, the stories come out, obviously, that he got involved with a bouncer in New Zealand on the 3rd one-day international in Wellington. The night before a game, he was clearly pissed. Bouncer gave him a right hook or a left hook, hopefully both. He got fined 30 grand. So that shows to me and you as well that that's a pretty serious incident. Kept under wraps, obviously, only because the Ashes was coming up and they didn't want a furore of this is what's happening. When they actually should have, in hindsight, I think they should have told us all beforehand. Make 6. England lose that series 3-0. They are now in danger of not automatic qualifying for next year's, the next World Cup, 50 over World Cup, which will be, they'll qualify, but they might have to go through this qualifying stage because the top 8 qualified, and I think they're 7th. Yeah, complete and utter shambles. Again, Stokes obviously injured. Felt for Matthew Potts. We talked about Shoaib Bashir wasn't going to play because he's not been given the best opportunity. Potts is an 82-mile-an-hour bowler, hasn't played for 6 weeks, and then you ask him to bowl at 85, 86. No wonder his line and length goes. Hasn't played cricket, and then you told him try and make him into something he isn't. Yeah, not good. Next test match in May, June, is it this year against Kiwis, I think, coming over? Who do you see playing in that? Crawley?
I think they'll keep Crawley.
Yeah, they shouldn't. 270 runs to 27.
Duckett will play.
Duckett should play. He's had one bad series. He's averaging just under 40, 10 more runs than Crawley. I'd like to see Crawley not play. They'll play him. I mean, I can go through it again. You can have Tom Haynes, Sussex captain, Ben McKinney up at Durham. You could play. Could you go back to Dom Sibley? They won't under this regime. I don't think he's good enough. But there's a couple of kids you could play. Ollie Pope's obviously done.
So I assume that Bethel will bat 3.
Yeah.
Now. Okay, so he'll bat 3. Root will obviously bat 4. Harry will bat 5. Stokes, if he's still captain, will be a spot too high at 6.
His batting's fallen off a cliff completely.
Right, so we had that sort of conversation maybe 3 weeks ago about it's more about Brook and his style of play. And I honestly think that Stokes has ruined himself as a batsman in terms of how he actually wants to play. And, you know, this series isn't a surprise in terms of what he's done. So he's averaged 18 with the bat this series. 18. I mean, the problem is, that's the problem when you look at this England lineup. I made a note of some of these. So Crawley averaged 27, Duckett 20, Stokes 18, Smith 23, Jacks 21. I mean, Root 44. I think Brooks was 40. Even Bethel, right, having scored that 150, he didn't score many runs in the other 3 innings. It's, you know, if you look at where the series has been lost, you know, I think it's pretty clear it's with the batting. Obviously, the bowling hasn't been great either, but the lack of runs from important people, including Stokes, just stands out. Yes, he'll have this gritty 40 off about 150 balls, and everyone goes, "Oh, why are more players not like Stokes?" But that isn't what Stokes' game isn't blocking for 30 or 40, you know, off 150 balls. You know, I've never seen a batsman get more miracle balls either than Stokes. You know, he always looks like he gets the most unplayable balls you've ever seen.
Yeah, and Stokes don't spin. Not that there's been any spin at all in the Ashes. Looks a complete rabbit. Yeah, England have got some. I can't see Jamie Smith playing. I think one of the Rue brothers down at Somerset will come into the test side. Jamie Cox looks like he's fallen out of favour as well. He's not in the World 2020 either, which is an odd one. And then the bowling, Mark Wood test career is done, or international career. Actually, he should just retire full stop. Jofra Archer, top class bowler, can't stay fit. We know that. Atkinson is a worry that, you know, can't stay fit. Played a lot of international cricket. Not a lot, but he's 28 and he's only played 30 first class games, and 16 of them have been test matches, and is picking up niggles here and there. Josh Tongue is the only one that's come out of any credit, and I didn't rate him at all. I think he looked short of a gallop last summer. Okay, he's come back from a couple of bad injuries, but he looked good actually. His control of line and length was good. Bowled that fuller ball which caused problems. Who knew? Attack the stumps. You have to have 2 ways of taking a wicket then. Bowling and LBW, not just caught long hops or down leg side or whatever it is. So they're gonna have to find some bowlers from somewhere.
What, you don't want Cast in there?
Cast, I think, is a good third, fourth seamer. He didn't really. I know he took
22 wickets at 30 this series, James. What would you have taken that at the start of the series? Yes.
As your fourth bowler, yeah. Not as your premier bowler. To be fair to him, at least Cast played all 5 test matches, and he's got a bit of attitude. I do like Cast. He's got a bit of attitude. He obviously gave the umpire a complete mouthful when Snicko again was just a shambles. Like, that's just blatantly wrong. That's an out, by the way. Weatherall should have been given out by Darmsina. Darmsina had a horror show, by the way, because Jake Webster's LPW to Harry Brook as well in the first innings was a back foot no ball as well. So they need to tighten that up, cricket. They need to get rid of Snicko or to make it universal that it's all one company that's doing it, not you can pick and choose. Stop this nonsense. But going back to it, Australia aren't a great side. That's the annoying thing.
No, and I think what's interesting is obviously, even like this test match, right? There's no Cummins, there's no Lyon, there's no Hazelwood. And you look at it's not a great Aussie lineup. And you look at the batting and you go, obviously Head has covered up a lot of deficiencies with that lineup. Scored big runs at important moments. It's not a great Aussie team, I don't think. And I think the thing that would epitomise the series more than anything is probably the fielding. Is when you've got two teams who there isn't probably a huge gap in talent between. It's things like fielding, so catching. Obviously, there can be a little bit of luck with catching in terms of, the ball sticking or not at times. Sometimes it can be an inch away from where you need it to be. All these sorts of things. So there can be a little bit of luck with it. But as a general rule, fielding I always think is probably the most repeatable, or should be the most repeatable skill of the three main ones. And there's a huge correlation between practice and being good at it. And what you also see is confidence. So when you're confident, and you'll know yourself, James, having played some cricket, when you're confident, you don't even think about it. Everything sticks. When you're struggling and you're overthinking things, suddenly you get a little bit tense, you get a little bit nervous, and the ball just suddenly pops out your hands. But it's such an indictment on where a team is, and I think England's fielding just shows you where this England team is. It isn't as confident as it portrays, and it's just shown in the fielding. The fielding has been horrendous.
But it's not just this winter gone, it's throughout McCullum's tenure. They haven't got a specialist fielding coach. Paul Collingwood disappeared from the scene. You fail to prepare to fail. And it's clear, agree with you, fielding, it's a key part of any form of cricket, to be honest, especially Test cricket. It's hard work taking 10 wickets at times, or 20 wickets to win a match. And if you constantly stay 25, 30, it's even harder. I mean, it's basic maths. And England don't. How can you not practice? How can you not have a specialist fielder? What is it, just like a schoolboy in the playground? Gone then, you get a bat, I'll whack it up in the air for a couple of times and you move on. Drop one, don't care, lads. Drop a one, I'd be fuming if I was a bowler.
I mean, the other thing about the fielding is this is not a young Australian team.
They're old.
Right? So England should be younger, more athletic, than this England team, than this Australian team. Their fielding should, in theory, be better. And it just hasn't been.
Yeah, and I think McCullum should be sacked in the Test ball. I think if you're going to, because he's obviously a white ball coach, I think they have to make change in Test ball arena. Sorry, red ball. Because you're asking him to change his philosophy. He's not going to do that. So let's just move on from. He can't continue the way he's playing because it's shown it's not going to succeed at the top level in a 5 Test match series against India, against Australia. We are light years away from a World Test Championship final. We're not going to qualify for the next one probably as well. So moving on. White ball, though, 6 weeks' time or 4 weeks' time, you've got the 2020 World Cup.
7th of February it starts in Sri Lanka, which obviously isn't where England really want to be playing, I don't think.
No. And who have England got in their group? They've got Bangladesh and Windies, and then they go into another. Do you have to top 2, or is it just a top 1 in that?
No idea. I haven't looked at it enough, to be honest.
But I think there's another group stage after that as well, and then the top 4 in that go into the semi-final and the final also. So it's a long winter for England because they were out in New Zealand. Then this, I think they're flying home, or they have started flying home anyway for a couple of days, and then.
But that is also part of the problem, right? In terms of the whole McCullum sort of philosophy on coaching, in terms of getting them to be a bit more relaxed. It is a big ask when you have certain players playing all formats. In terms of being in New Zealand, being in Australia for months on end, you come home for a week or two, and then you're off to Sri Lanka potentially for several weeks. You then, next thing you know, it'll be IPL. What, April,
May, yeah. I don't think any of them are playing in that though, because Brooke obviously he's banned from it anyway. Not for his. But
then you're back into like England summer, where England will have test matches, and you've been non-stop pretty much for the last 7-8 months. It's not easy.
Yeah, England have always had the issue. They're the only Northern Hemisphere side that play all year round, kind of thing. So yeah, I want some change, but disappointing because always like watching Ashes Test match cricket.
I like watching Bazball cricket, James. It's exciting, entertaining. I watched the Arsenal game last night. Oh my god! give me Bazball any day. In terms of other sports this week, we obviously have a bit of snooker starting on Sunday, the Masters. I think we got Murphy and Selby both playing, and then on Monday we have Zintong against Wilson and Williams against Allen. So I'm sure there'll be something to keep an eye on if there's a small gap in the sporting calendar, which probably feels unlikely this weekend. Any rugby, James?
Yeah, there's a bit of rugby. The Heineken Cup, or European Champions Cup as it's called, is back for 2 weeks. So tonight you've got Bath are playing away at Castra, I think. Bath, yeah, they're away at Castra, and you've got Edinburgh will beat Gloucester tonight. The big games are Leinster La Rochelle tomorrow. Rog Roningara, coach at La Rochelle, is going back to Ireland. Obviously, he's ex-Munster. History with Johnny Sexton et al. At Leinster. So that would be an interesting game. And then on Sunday, the 2 big games are Northampton away at Bordeaux, which is a repeat of last year's final. Tough game for Northampton. I was actually invited to it randomly back in December, but it's way too close to Christmas. So that would be a good game actually Sunday afternoon to watch. I'll watch that. And then you've got Saracens are playing as well on Sunday. So you've got 2 weeks of that, and then you've got a week of Premiership rugby, and the Six Nations will start in the beginning of February on the Thursday night game in 4 weeks' time. So that was always good for Six Nations.
Tennis, it was quite a funny story emerging from tennis this week. So it's like a Challenger Tour event in Kenya, and this Egyptian girl called, let me just get her name right, Abdelkader. She lost 6-0, 6-0, but I think you would have given her a run for her money on the tennis court, James. She'd been given a wild card. She couldn't serve properly. In some respects, it was surprising that she managed to win 3 points, although 2 of those were double faults by her opponent, and the other was an unforced error. It is quite. I'm not going to lie. My immediate thought was, what price was she in the markets? And I don't know what the answer. I never found out what the answer to that was actually. But we might get you putting a dress on, get you onto pay for you to get a wild card into an event, James. We'll have a field day betting on your opponent.
Yeah, equal pay at Al.
Obviously, Oz Open's coming up relatively soon, which we touched on last time out. I'm not going to say the most interesting sport this weekend, but the one I'll, obviously be watching football, but the one we'll be watching a lot of is NFL. We are into the playoffs now. Just before touching on that, the coaching merry-go-round is happening in the NFL. I think it's 8 coaches now have been fired. The biggest one by a country mile is John Harbaugh at Baltimore Ravens. He'd been there for 18 years. Baltimore obviously haven't made the playoffs this year, which is a bit of a surprise. It's a surprise in as much as Baltimore have got a good team. They've been a little bit unlucky with injuries and things like that. What I am sort of reading or hearing is that it was almost an ultimatum between coach and Lamar Jackson. It looks like those two fell out, and clearly the Ravens feel that going forward, Jackson is more important. They do have a franchise quarterback there. He is pretty special. So it's quite an interesting development this week. It'd be interesting to see who comes in there. Obviously, he will go not wherever he wants, but he will have pick of almost.
He'll pick up a job pretty quickly.
I mean, there was a statement released straight away saying that 7 teams have been in touch with him already and things like that. So obviously, McDaniel's gone at Miami as well. No huge surprise. He's been quite a polarizing figure over the years. Been a little bit wacky. But we go into the playoffs. Obviously, 6 games this weekend. Seattle, Denver have byes. So it all starts Saturday night with the Rams at Carolina. Rams, pretty big favourites to go through. It's tough to imagine them not going through. I mean, Carolina would have been one of the biggest surprises in terms of actually making the playoffs. I'm still not convinced they're particularly great, but it'd be interesting to see which Rams turn up, because I still have a feeling that if the Rams certainly play the Seahawks again in a neutral venue, I'd be inclined to take the Rams. Obviously, there's a few games between that type of scenario, and obviously it can't happen in the Super Bowl. But
the Rams have to put a statement performance out tomorrow night, just for their own confidence and their own getting some belief back and going, we're good. No, we're up.
They're really good.
Yeah, but do they have to put a statement performance out and go and blow away the Panthers?
I don't think so. I think more important for them is being healthy. So getting Adams back, him not being injured. I mean, he's such an important part of their of the passing game. What's always amazing with NFL is 1 or 2 players here and there can make such a big difference in terms of opening everything else up. And I think what I like about Rams is they are balanced. They can run the ball really well, throw the ball really well with Stafford. I mean, Carolina have had games this year where they've run teams into oblivion under Dowdle and Hubbard. But it's not easy to do that against this Rams team. I mean, I would expect a comfortable Rams win. But I mean, as you say, it is a chance to lay down a marker in terms of the rest of the season.
It's just more for your own confidence, your own mindset, and when you go further down the line, when you're in a tight spot, you can do it, kind of thing. You've got the confidence, you've done that play before, or you've thrown it to that, to that wide receiver or whatever, or you stopped a third down or whatever it is, a vital point in that game. You've got the confidence, and it's muscle memory. It's there. You can go to it all the time. So when the pressure's on, that play, and you can do that play repetitively and well. Games like this, it's not an easy game, because no games are easy when you're at this stage of the competition, but it's an easier game than you might expect, like considering the other 5 games when, almost all 5 of them are not 50-50 games, but
they're all a lot. This is certainly the most lopsided of the 6 games. So it'll be interesting, but that's on Saturday evening in the UK. So late Saturday, early Sunday, we've got Green Bay at Chicago, which should be a bit of it'll be a very interesting one because obviously it's a big rivalry. It's meant to be quite windy, I think, as well, which adds another element to it. I think Jordan Love is expected to play, having been concussed. Green Bay also get a few, they've got their full quota of wide receivers back, which obviously always helps. But I'm intrigued to see how Williams and Chicago do as well. They've won a lot of games in tight situations this season. I think just going to be a really interesting game. I wouldn't like to try and predict what will happen in that, to be honest. And then we have Buffalo or Jacksonville. So this is an interesting one because I've said for a few weeks I think Buffalo tend to be a bit overrated and Jacksonville underrated. So this is almost like a perfect coming together of those two. Buffalo are incredibly dependent on Josh Allen, and he doesn't look fully fit at the moment. He's had niggles for a few weeks. And I think we've seen it with the likes of Mahomes in previous years, is that if you have a quarterback who relies on their mobility in the way that Allen does, I mean, he's such an important player in terms of running the ball, scrambling. If you take some of that away from him, it definitely takes some, it certainly lessens his impact. And, defensively, I don't think Buffalo are particularly great. And I think Jacksonville have been probably the biggest revelation in the last half of this, certainly in the second half of the season. Some of that is correlated to Lawrence throwing the ball a little bit deeper than he was, taking a few more chances. Again, some of that relates to Mayers coming in. But, I think Jacksonville have quite a balanced sort of team. They can run the ball with Etienne, and they have a decent passing game. So it'll be quite interesting to see.
Could be Etienne's final game in a Jags uniform.
What's the other one?
I actually found if you stop the Bills, if you get Josh Allen not tomorrow night, sorry, it's on Sunday night, or Sunday, 6 o'clock here, 1 o'clock Eastern time. If you can stop him, you say his movement's not great at the moment, then you could get some, Lawrence will have more time in the ball, I think. And I'll be looking at, I know they're even money to pair, but I'll probably fancy Jaguars to take that.
Well, I mean, obviously, Buffalo have got Cook in terms of running game, and he's obviously had a very good season. But some of that is on the basis that you're trying to prevent Allen. So it's a great sort of situation for Cook to be in when you play with Allen, because the defense doesn't know quite where it needs to be, which opens up holes for Cook. If you're not as worried about Allen running, it makes it that bit easier to shut Cook down, I think, as well. So other game on Sunday, we've got San Fran at Philadelphia. San Fran obviously looked pretty poor against Seattle last week. They did have a couple of injuries. Not been big on Philadelphia all year. The offense just looked poor. It's tough really to put a finger on just quite why it's so poor. I mean, the run game hasn't been as good this year for Barkley. A lot of that will come from offensive line issues as much as anything. The other issue is Hurts just isn't very good at throwing the ball.
Bit of an issue for a quarterback.
Well, I mean, obviously, look, he's won Super Bowls, but I don't think he's certainly not a quarterback who's going to move the needle with his throwing game. So if the running game isn't having a lot of success, it puts more emphasis on him to have to do things. And he hasn't really, despite having two great wide receivers in Smith and AJ Brown, he hasn't really shown himself that capable, I don't think.
Yeah.
San Fran, bit of a mystery to me in that, defensively they are not good. Obviously they have offensive weapons with McCaffrey. I don't know, it's just something unconvincing about San Francisco. But I don't know, it's one of those games where It's just tricky to get too involved, to be honest.
Watching game.
You've got Chargers at New England. So, I mean, I find this a more interesting game than the San Fran game. Obviously, Herbert, I think Herbert's a bit of a superstar at passing. But he gets no protection. So, one of the things would be just how much pressure New England can put on him. And I suspect it will be a problem for Chargers, just how much pressure New England will put on them. New England have obviously been one of the surprise teams this year. They have had an easy schedule, but they've also blown quite a few teams out. May looks the real deal. It's going to be a tricky game for Chargers going into New England, I think. And then the final game is Houston at Pittsburgh, and that is on Monday night. And it will be, again, quite a fascinating one. I think a lot of people are quite unsure as to how Pittsburgh have found themselves in this position, because they haven't looked brilliant, but they just keep winning games.
Rodgers' experience might, I don't know, he's just an old man, isn't he? But Houston's defence, Texans' defence is decent. Can they get to him? Because he obviously releases the ball extremely quickly, Rodgers. Is he the top in the league at releasing the ball?
It'll certainly be one of them. I mean, Brady always used to be up there with that type of stat. I think one of the problems you have with Rodgers is it's one thing releasing it quickly, but you have to be able to. So he ends up passing the ball very short distances a lot. One of the problems you have is against particularly against a good defense like Texans have got, is you need to have the option of being able to throw it longer, and that'd be where obviously your Metcalfs of the world get involved. But they're not going to beat Houston by just dumping it off, I don't think. I mean, I'd always worry about the Texans offensively. Stroud is a bit inconsistent. Obviously had a great rookie year. But Pittsburgh, the way they actually defend in terms of the schemes that they use, you could easily see Collins have a big night. So, again, quite a tricky game to call, I think. But all said and done, really looking forward to it all. And, it should just be a lot of fun. 6. What's the spread, James, on how many of those 6 games I'm able to get away with watching?
6.
We will see.
Talking of NFL, once they get down to maybe the championship final games, we might get someone on or a couple of people on who are very knowledgeable about NFL as well to talk about things. Might be worth a couple of mates just to do a bit more of a preview, especially for the Super Bowl as well.
Yeah,
see if we can get them on to the channel.
The only other thing, obviously, we've got FA Cup coming up this weekend. It's 4 all Premier League games. So we've got Everton, Sunderland, Newcastle, Bournemouth, Tottenham, Villa, Man United, Brighton. I mean, obviously, the FA Cup third round is massive for the lower league teams. As a Premier League, it's someone who predominantly watched Premier League football. It's not that exciting, in terms of even the teams that, as a Premier League team that your manager will put out, they tend to be massively weakened, and you tend to see teams just not take this competition that seriously.
Yeah, it's just history now. It's just, especially after a busy period for the Premier League teams, especially they're playing 4 or 5 Premier League games in a couple of weeks, kind of thing. The big sides are definitely going to rest their players as much as they can do. So you top of Arsenal, Liverpool, Man City, Villa, I'd expect will rest a lot of players just because they can do, and it's the Force Cup kind of thing. They're not interested in it. It doesn't bring anything to them really per se. Expect Liverpool to make a load of changes. It's boring. It's massive for teams like Exeter who are playing Man City away. Exeter have got financial issues because of mismanagement that's happened in the last 12 to 18 months. So they're going to get between £250,000 and £400,000, which is huge, Obviously, there's no replays that go to penalties as well.
So,
However,
just quickly on that, is that I assume that's based on gate receipts, right, for Man City?
Yeah.
So is that the number of people actually in the stadium, or is that the number of people that we're told are in the stadium?
Pass. But yeah, they've actually asked Exeter, have asked Man City for more money, saying you should help the lower league clubs. Hang on, Exeter, you mismanage it. You can't go to Man City just because you got luck of a draw. If you were playing Shrewsbury Town or someone like that, you wouldn't be asking. So you can pipe down just because your mismanagement of your football club in the last 12 to 18 months has put you in financial issues. Don't go to Man City and say, we want some money. Please help. We're desperate. But yeah, it used to be great because it used to be the only games on TV back in the day growing up. But now there's so much more football with Champions League and Europa League and League Cup games and things like that. It's obviously the media try and make it how it's the magic of the FA Cup, and there'll be stories about non-league clubs, things like this. The teams will just be, a lot of them, especially top-end Premier League teams, will just play their reserves, change the keepers, obviously, as well. Most teams will change to their second-choice keepers. Not something I'll be watching.
Well, I will be watching Spurs Villa, but I would expect a pretty changed Villa lineup, to be honest. What else is there? Oh, just quickly, final thing, just transfers. There was a couple of interesting things. So obviously Semenyo's gone to Man City. That's been on the cards for a little while. It looks like Spurs are going to sign some 19-year-old Brazilian left back called Souza. Not a position that Tottenham really need overly. So that was quite interesting. Obviously, Guehi, there's some speculation about Arsenal now joining the race. I don't really see where he fits in at Arsenal. I mean, maybe it's just the transfer fee of, if it's 25 million, it's not the worst player in the world. Maybe they'd get him and not sign Hincapi. I don't know. It just seems a bit of a weird link to Arsenal. They have enough players to try and keep happy as it is.
I think he ends up at Man City. I think Liverpool are out of the race. Talked about it here. I don't think they're going to give Slot any money to buy this window. Mark Gay plays at Palace. I've said it before. Plays at Palace in a 3 at the back. He would come to Liverpool, who played 4 at the back on the halfway line. So I don't think he'll come to Liverpool. I think if you're going to continue playing 4 at the back under the new coach, whoever he is in the summer or whenever it takes place, that I think you can get better defenders throughout Europe anyway than Mark Gay. He's a good player, but he's unproven at the top level. Let's be honest about it.
I guess the appeal of Guehi is the overall package, because his transfer fee is not massive and his wages.
They still want 20-25 million quid for him now.
No, but when you compare that to a 60-70 million pounds for a player, it's not a bad option. The total package might end up being 60-70 million, but it's more palatable than the 100 million or whatever if he costs 60 million.
Yeah, homegrown, obviously, so you've got that as well. He's a leader, he's a captain of Palace. I think the ship's sailed for Liverpool. As I said, I think City will be interested in him. I think they'll get him eventually.
So there was quite an interesting one with Callum Wilson this week where he got released by West Ham early from his contract. I know obviously they've signed the 2 new players, Calistanos, who started against Forest, and Pablo. But it was very weird. So obviously he's only on a contract until the end of the year. He was, at that time, only the only fit striker, given Fulkrug's gone. It just struck me as so bizarre that they would release him. There was obviously an opportunity for him off the bench to be, cause some trouble. I don't know if something's gone on behind the scenes, but it just seemed like just such a weird move.
Yeah, he must have a club lined up somewhere to go in the Championship or somewhere like that, I'd imagine. Coventry?
Who knows? I mean, the other one is, so Villa, and it's not confirmed yet, but there's a lot of chat about Villa signing a young kid called Brian Maggio. He's only 16. And what's interesting about this really was just the transfer fee that's been quoted of £12 million. It's an enormous sum of money for a 16-year-old. Yes, he's played for Metz in League One already. He plays for Luxembourg. I think he is eligible to play for England. Just seems like it's almost like a shift. We're seeing a shift in terms of transfer policy of certain teams. You know, they're willing to spend even bigger money on these kids who are 16, 17, rather than waiting till they're 18, 19, when suddenly it'll be 35 million.
Yeah, Liverpool just signed 2 young centre-backs as well. So there is a definite for decent sums as well. So not decent sums, but not that much. But there is a shift in policy to buy younger talent coming through. There is a lot of young talent coming through. Talking of football this week.
But yeah, so anything else?
Yeah, just about to say, talking about football this week, the Spanish Super Cup is between Barcelona and Real Madrid. Sunday night, 7 o'clock, and it's live on TNT Sports here in the UK. So if you're not watching NFL and you're not watching the FA Cup and you've got TNT subscription, then you can watch Barcelona versus Real Madrid, because it's normally on Premier Sports, those games, so in the league anyway, so that'll be on.
I just hope it's not covered in the way that TNT cover the cricket, James.
That was embarrassing.
But I'm sure we can talk about that a different day if you want.
Yeah. One thing, there's a bit of horse racing this week. Some races at Sandown tomorrow. And there's a Group 1 at Naas this afternoon. The decorations for Cheltenham are not the final decorations, but the 90-day decorations was for Cheltenham, or 60-day decorations were there. Lossy Mouse is drifting massively in the champion hurdle, probably going to the mare's hurdle, which is an interesting one. And the Gold Cup market is what it is. It's 6-1 the field. So they all stood their ground there. Sorry, Factor Far is going to go to Ryanair 2 miles 4. We know that he doesn't get 3 miles. So Gino's favourite for the champion hurdle. I wonder where Constitutional Hill will run next. He shouldn't run next, but Nicky Henderson's pretty adamant he wants to run him next. Nicky, please just retire him before he gets a serious injury. And one thing on one of the sports I do really like, that I know you don't follow it really, is cycling. One of the Yates boys, Simon Yates, announced his retirement on this week, Wednesday, I think it was, the Giro d'Italia winner. He's had a fantastic career. Him and his brother Adam, but Simon Yates, 2-time Grand Tour winner, retiring at the age of 33. He's been a fantastic servant to sports cycling, been brilliant, been a great team man as well for Jumbo with Jonas Vingegaard there. So yeah, sad to see him go, but there's always ones coming up. Well, you've got Pogacar, who's going to win his 4th Tour de France this summer. GOAT.
Right, James. Let's call it a day and enjoy a weekend of sport.
Cheers, Luke. Cheers, everyone.